Hello there, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Smart Citizenship podcast. My name is Maha Shafkat, and I'm here today with investment migration connoisseur and managing director Smart Citizenship, Ahmed Shaner. We've helped hordes of investors in making smart investment choices. And if you're also interested in finding out how to smartly invest your money and secure your future, be sure to visit our website, smartcitizenship.com. This podcast is brought to you by Smart Citizenship and Smart Investment Fund with offices in UAE, Turkey, and Greece. Today, we're going to be talking about the benefits of investment migration, alternative options after the imminent closure of the Portuguese Golden Visa, and the benefits and requirements for the Greek Golden Visa. We have Ahmed here today, who specializes in golden visas and citizenship by investment programs. Hi, Ahmed. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Of course, I'm doing great. Our first ever podcast with you, a beautiful Istanbul day. How can I feel bad? What about you?
Indeed, it is. I feel really excited about our first ever episode. So, Ahmed, let's just jump right in. So, what are the benefits of investment migration for end users, and how can they choose the best option for their needs?
A number of things, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But most people look at it from a mobility perspective. They consider getting a golden visa or a second passport for the mobility reasons. Getting to country A or country B easier and without a visa. So that's number one, basic. Number two is in the case of the second residencies, you are picking your plan B country if you want to relocate. Because just consider the golden visa programs in general. A Greek golden visa would allow you to live in Greece for the entirety of a year. However, it would allow you access up to 90 days to, say, Germany. So it's Schengen visa zone access, but basically you're picking the country you live in until you get naturalized, of course.
You know, I really find this idea of investment migration very interesting because I belong to a country where the passport isn't as strong, and it's extremely difficult to get visas for most countries in the world. So I definitely understand the importance of a second citizenship and having a passport that allows you access to multiple countries, not just for travel purposes, but also for a better future for your kids and even for your own self. So, while staying on this, can you suggest some alternative investment migration options for investors to consider given the imminent closure of the Portuguese Golden Visa?
Of course, if the end target is Europe, we are losing one of the most strong options, Portugal. We already lost Ireland. And let's look at a bird's eye perspective of what is open for us right now. So basically, somebody can do the Greek Golden Visa program. They can go to Latvia. They can do the Spanish Golden Visa program, which is still alive and kicking, thankfully. Or they can pick the new kid on the block, Italian Golden Visa. So these routes are already open, starting from 250K to 500K euros of investment. And all, I think, are situationally good. So I'm not one of the consultants who say, like, program X is the best and ignore the rest. And every one of them situationally apply to different people. So, but that's the golden visa angle. If your end route is basically, end target is Europe. But the Caribbean programs, some of them, people just get it for the Schengen access angle. I don't agree with this, honestly. I would get them even if I have some sort of residency access in Europe, but just as a very expensive insurance policy, just in case my citizenship, my passport becomes toxic for some reason or other. We've seen it with the Russians. Iranians have been going through this for years, decades, basically. But if you just get that passport, perhaps just for yourself, and put it in your safe deposit box. If the day comes that for some reason your citizenship results in your bank account being closed, you can just replace it. Because people want to help you, really. In the case, people want to help their Russian clients, colleagues, and but they can help them only in the case where they have the backup passport, where they can switch it. And yes, the Caribbean programs are sold, usually promoted, usually for the Schengen access. This can disappear, really. But that's not the point. That's not the point. Especially if you're in the finance industry, especially if you're in international trade, some sort of import-export business. If you're even a banker yourself, a white-collar banker, I would just get that very expensive, admittedly, insurance in the form of a passport.
All right. Ever since we heard about the news coming from Portugal, I've been personally seeing a lot of advertisements, news, and actually a lot of even recommendations of the Greek Golden Visa. So, Ahmed, tell us, how does it compare to other popular investment migration options, especially in comparison with the Portuguese Golden Visa? And do you suggest investors to consider the Greek Golden Visa at this very moment?
I think it's one of the strong contenders. I would personally get it, the Greek program. But the thing I like about it, let's talk about in comparison to
Okay,
Portugal.
yeah.
Well, Portugal processing times have already been a nightmare. Getting anything done in the immigration authority over there, the very unfortunately named CEF, Border and Immigration Authority,
Yes.
getting anything done is next to impossible. I would speculate and say they don't know what they're doing themselves. And a typical application, let's ignore the investment part of it, let's ignore the bank account opening, which is a headache, honestly, in Portugal. Or should I say was, I don't know. We still don't know what's going
Yes.
to happen at the end of the day. But when you compare that to Greece, Greece is super fast. Realistically, once you hand in your application, in 2 months, most likely you will have your card. Let's say 2.5 months just to be sure. Compared to Portugal, 1 year plus times. But of course, back in the day when the program was, let's say, the popular one, we were saying well, without staying there, it ends up being a citizenship at the end of the day. So we promoted it as a citizenship program, the Portuguese one. Well, let's face it, Greek program is not. Our Greek friends, they're never going to give you their passport unless you try really hard for it. So basically, that's it. But in terms of a mobility that's super fast, I'm just saying because of the very low costs involved in getting the golden visa as compared to the Portuguese, really high concession costs, card costs, all the money you pay to the government, which I say it disappears. Compared to that, Greek program is quite simple. I'm calling it a impulse purchase, honestly. 250k euros. I mean, rather than owning your 10th apartment in, say, Istanbul, London, Shanghai, wherever, buy the 11th one in Greece, and in 2 months, you will have visa-free access to the Schengen zone. Basically, that's the main point.
I think that sounds like a very interesting program, and people, especially those who were interested in gaining access to the Shenzhen area, should definitely consider it. Also, would you like to tell us more about the 250k option and till how long it's going to be available for? Because as the news are coming out, they're going to be changing it to 500,000 euros by the end of July, right?
Technically correct. You never know.
Okay.
Well, they can extend it again.
Okay.
They can enforce it as it is. But it's not that big of a change,
Hmm.
really. Imagine just the central zones. Let's talk about Athens as a very
Yes.
specific. I think like most people will acquire the unit in Athens anyway, since it has the most liquidity. Like it's a really, I would say, a real cultural capital, let's say, of the region. So imagine just the central zones we lose. But you can just hop on the tram from central Athens and go to south a bit. You would still be within, I would say, 15-20 minutes you would be in the 250k zone again. That's still Athens.
That's correct.
So I'm not very worried. However, I'm worried about the real estate prices in the places that qualify. Because we had the same thing in Portugal, remember?
Yes, I do actually.
After they disqualified the residentials in Lisbon, Porto, and the coast in general,
Yes.
what happened was that Evora became the number one superstar of Portugal real estate, and prices there went crazy. And so basically, moving forward, I'm hearing a lot of Chinese companies acquiring whole buildings south of Athens. I'm hearing some even Turkish guys moving in to acquire a few blocks so that they can make it Golden Visa product
Okay.
and to promote. So basically, that's what I would be worried about.
Okay, for those who are new to the concept of investment migration, can you please discuss the different investment options that are available for these programs, such as real estate and job openings, business creation? Can you please shed some light on that?
Sure, sure. So in general, the like in quotation mark golden visas and citizenship by investment programs, they are designed to be passive because they are just targeting the market where everyone is getting it for the plan B. So nobody is actually thinking of moving there. It's not a need today. So I'm saying in most cases. There are some cases where they absolutely need it, especially the passports. So basically, the angle, it's designed by government to be as passive as possible. So let's see. The bread and butter is real estate. By the way, you can just get real estate in the Caribbean as well, and qualify for the passport. It's a bit unorthodox for us, but in general, you can do it. In Turkey, you can do it. Greece, Spain, you can't do it in Italy yet.
Yes.
There are some tricky ways of doing it, but I'm not going there. I would just stay within the box that's given to us by the Italian government. So the other route, you can just do a bank deposit. This is everywhere you can do it. In Portugal, we used to be able to do it. In Greece, you can too, if you're into that thing, sort of thing, but the money stays there. And of course, having open cash in the age of inflation, in the decade of inflation, is not a very good idea, but you can do it in Turkey as well. You can do fund investments pretty much anywhere because the fund system is very compatible with with the notion of having a passive investment, because managing the money is somebody else's problem. Well, if you make money or if you lose your money or not, that's your problem, of course, but managing it is somebody else's problem. And usually there are some bond investment options, for example, as in the Latvian example, and capital injection to companies, that's still popular. I would say that's the core of the Italian program, basically. Like capital injection to Italian companies. Well, the price differs from like how large of a company it is, let's say. If it's a startup or if it's a company that has reached escape velocity. Basically, that's how they differ it. And capital injection, of course, it brings a bit of a headache. So it's not the natural, I would say, way of acquiring a plan B, residency or citizenship.
Okay, according to you, which option do you think is the safest one?
Safe. I think we need to forget this word when it comes to CBI or residency by investment programs.
Alright.
Because let's be honest, governments have taken the stance where they decided they don't like us anymore. We were good and useful after the subprime mortgage crisis, when money was flowing into countries that were hit hardest, let's say. But the programs are under fire. And there's a lot of votes to be gained by, oh, we stopped the evil immigrants from investing money with us, God forbid, and getting our residency, creating jobs, we stopped them. When you say this, you get votes. And getting votes, I mean, it's just a impulsive thing for politicians. They don't think about the long run. They just think about winning the next election. They're not like us. I have, for my clients, for myself, I need to plan decades. They just need to plan until the next election. So that's why we cannot talk about safety anymore. Look at what's going on in Portugal. I don't know if any of the further questions have exactly the term what in heavens is going on in Portugal.
That's
But
a long discussion.
it's a very long
It calls
discussion.
for another podcast.
I would say yes.
Yes.
Because imagine, they just decided, showed up one day, Prime Minister and his best buddy, they come on they come on TV and say that we closed the program. That's not how it works,
Yeah, they
buddy.
probably woke up one day and decided this is it.
I think it's premeditated, but that's not how it works, man. You
Yeah.
just need to, there's this thing called parliament. People need to raise their hands. You have this really nice gentleman you call a president. He needs to sign it. He needs to be on board. But as you see, like, it's becoming a trend. And even in Turkey, we're like recording this podcast before the elections. Like, an opposition victory is an automatic closure of the Turkish program as well. And imagine, if you invest right now, like before we have 30 days to go until the election. If you invest right now, your application won't be finished. So let's plan for the worst.
Yeah.
And if possible, let's get multiple of these residencies and citizenships just in case.
If you can afford it.
It's not that big of an investment when you think about it. It depends on what you're comparing it to.
Okay. Circling back to the same question, Ahmed, because you have been in this industry for a very long time and have seen the ups and downs of various investors, various programs. Can you please tell us a little about how can investors ensure that the investment that they're making has some sort of a safety net around it?
Mm-hmm. Of course. Well, let's be very honest. If any kind of investment has an extreme amount of marketing built in around it, well, that's one huge, I hate the word red flag, but let's say it's not a good sign. So, because why are you marketing this hard? If it's an investment, luxury real estate, if they're doing marketing, I respect that. But luxury real estate and second residency investment, they should never go hand in hand. So basically, you can do it for yourself, but safety, I would say refrain from just aggressive marketing. The moment you see it, run away. That's very simple. If it was such a good investment, they don't need to chase the investors that much. Of course, they need to be known. I give it to any of the promoters, but it should be normal, let's say. Number two, just focus on historically important areas when you're investing in real estate. If it's, for example, if you're aiming for fund company investment, well, there are a few things you cannot go wrong in the next decade. Energy, agriculture. Well, nobody has any fund that I know invests in the defense industry, but people are obviously going to need it in the next few decades. But you need to focus on the industry if you're investing in a company. So, like, let's replace the defense industry with medical and you're golden.
Yeah.
So, agriculture, medical. So, these are, let's say, the most important ones. And energy, we are going to need more of it, whatever happens. So, if one day, as of the day we're recording this, people are at each other's throat in the world, let's say they need to decide to get along. We still need energy because the economy is going to grow. More production will be required. So this is where I would deploy it in.
Okay. I'm going to ask a very simple question. Can you just list some important factors to consider when choosing an investment migration option?
Okay, of course. So number one, what's your family composition? Who are you doing this for? Because, the Greek program goes to your parents, and if you're married, your husband or wife's parents as well. So if you're investing for a larger group, and the Greek program is historically, they are welcoming the most dependents per main investor. So large family, if you want a residency route, residency option, Schengen access, I would say Greece. So again, I wish I had simple answers. I'm not that kind of guy. I think
Yes,
you
I
know
know.
by now. It depends on what you want to do. If your current passport is not doing anything at all for you, like the case you mentioned, if you're from the last 20 slots of indexes we have, so if you're there, you should get a nice Caribbean passport, not for the mobility, because it's substantially easier to apply to the USA visa through using that,
Yes, I agree.
basically. And it gives you a banking angle. So if you operate a complex business that is multinational, you need a lot of banking services. I would say just like you need to diversify even your residencies, because you absolutely need a European golden visa, any of it, I don't care which, so that you have access to banking system in Europe. Yes, they open your bank account without a residency, and I think this is going to end very soon, by the way. They still open, but it will be tied to residencies, your right to access in the European zone. So if you need this, you need absolutely any of it. It can be Latvian, and with the Latvian residency permit, you will see you can open bank accounts in Germany, Italy as well. It works like a magical solution for your banking. And so that's another situational use you can have. And finally, just having a second passport, it translates into having a new face for your business, let's say. And I think the next unlucky crowd in the world, as we approach halfway to 2023, it looks like Chinese are going to be under fire a lot, economically
Okay.
and politically. So basically, for them, have opening your new companies with your new passport would ensure you wouldn't be discriminated so hard.
And this is something that we saw when the Russia-Ukraine conflict began, and hordes of Russians and Ukrainian investors came to Turkey. Actually, I was reading one of your articles where you mentioned that it is imperative that once you obtain a second citizenship, you should open another company in that country, along with, of course, a different bank account, so that you completely protect yourself, but also your business.
Of course, it's like goes without asking. The costs are really low in maintaining a company. But before we go to the Turkish example, like I want to, while we're on record, I want to say whenever someone shows up and just for that initial consultation, my first ever question right now is, do you have a Dubai company?
Okay.
So this is what I start with. And I ask this to white collars as well, white collar employees as well, because it's super straightforward. Tax wise, it's like, I'm not going to call it a tax haven because of the like negative connotations with it.
Yeah.
I don't know why a tax haven is a negative thing, honestly, by the way. But when you look at the media, it is negative. So tax wise, it's a dream. And doing business over there is quite easy, by the way, except the banking side. But what you can do is that you can have your company domiciled in Dubai and open your bank account in another country. We
Okay.
can do it very easily in Turkey. So basically, when someone shows up, even before we get to the citizenship and residency, I ask this, like, do you have your Dubai company set up? You should. Like right now, it's Dubai. By the way, 2 years later, it could be something somewhere else, another jurisdiction that is very easy to do business. Because don't forget, people have gotten used to making payments to Dubai. They haven't gotten used to making payments to other jurisdictions where there's low tax and it's attractive for business people. So that's number one. Number two, you receive your residency or citizenship. Your next move absolutely has to be establishing that company. I don't care if you need it or not. It costs you next to nothing, doesn't have to be active, and I tell people just have it ready, just in case, before you have to seek that firefighter solution. Where, because, a lot of people showed up, they still come, not necessarily only Russians, a lot of people from lots of jurisdictions, they come to us saying, I need to solve my banking nightmares.
Yes.
Because every single transaction is a nightmare these days, and they are going to get worse. The worse the economy gets, the worse the transactions are going to become, because the only way you can keep the money in a legitimate way before you go to capital controls, like the situation in China, Pakistan, for example, the worst capital controls, I would say, before the situation goes there, you should have your company ready at least. Then it becomes not a new company. Then it already has all the bank accounts open, a few bank accounts. if you have some traffic, so it will make your life so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a preventative measure, it's quite important, especially given in the current volatile political situation around the globe right now.
Mhm.
Okay, Ahmed. So tell us something for all the listeners. What are the common mistakes that investors make when pursuing an investment migration option? And how can they be avoided?
If an offer is too good to be true, then it isn't true.
I
That's number
agree.
one thing. So if any offer is substantially better than the rest of the offers you get, just be careful. Because I heard of a story, not a story, by the way, our legal partners are going to press charges for the guys who did it. Somebody tried selling a green Turkish passport to a gentleman who has received their Turkish passport for 35,000 USD.
Okay.
Number one, it's not for sale. You can be granted the green Turkish passport under if you play your cards right. I'm not saying anything political or anything. If you establish an import-export company in Turkey for 3 years, if you export a certain amount, the Turkish government gives you the green passport. So it's achievable, but somebody tried selling it for 35K. Well, if again, it's an amazing offer, so it's not true. What you should be doing, the offers you are getting should be very boring. If something is too exciting, you can avoid it. So that's number one. How to avoid mistakes? Don't just do your own research, please. And if someone is telling you something contradicting your personal research, ask them for a source. How are you quoting it? Ask them for a government source if they're contradicting your own research. And consultants, I would say it's a must-have. But don't meet only one. I think I'm not being a good business person. I'm
But
advising
you're being honest, which is a great thing.
honesty and success. They are not necessarily related.
But it goes a long way with honest and loyal customers.
Of course, 80% of the business we have, it's it's referrals from current
Exactly.
customers. Of course, nobody gets ripped off here and they are referring more people. But here's the thing, just interview a few more people and ask them if somebody is contradicting the other guys, ask the other guy. Let them answer. Because, I'm just going to go ahead and give an example. Perhaps I shouldn't, but we were pitching investments to someone we know in Greece, a Turkish gentleman, and he was planning to do the Greek Golden Visa. We proposed some things, and he chose in a substantially different investment. And we asked why. What did you find? So, here is what he invested in. I'm not going to comment on it, but this development company, the product is under development, delivery in 18 months. He purchases it, and the developer starts paying the rent immediately for a unit that doesn't exist. So where is this money coming from? A. And it gives them cash flow, but it looks... I said I'm not going to comment, but I have to. How do you think Ponzi schemes work? They get your money, they get other guys' money, and they pay you some dividends. That's how it works.
I mean, you're bound to get ripped off when you're being greedy, so.
Exactly. So again, if something looks substantially better than everything else, just be careful.
Okay, so can you share some success stories of your clients and investors who've successfully pursued an investment migration option with your assistance and that they're really happy at this point?
There is, even today,
Yes.
there is not a single person who came to me and said, Ahmet, why did you make me purchase that X investment for that Y or residency? Never.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It should be the same with everyone, honestly,
But it's not.
apparently it isn't. We hear a lot of horror stories, but nobody told me this. By the way, let's be very straightforward about everybody made money because we were doing boring things, not the very exciting things that most people are running around for. So success stories, well, we had a lot of investors who decided to increase their citizenship portfolio before 2022. And these are the people who already became success stories. Imagine, we had Russian clients getting the Turkish citizenship before everything. Number one, they got it, they had to deploy less cash in Turkey because it was cheaper. Real estate was cheaper and the program was cheaper. And people who just bought their units in Turkey in 2019, they almost doubled their money in dollar terms. People are looking at the Turkish currency crash, but real estate in some parts of Istanbul doubled in absolute dollar terms, USD terms. So basically, that's success. You double your money. Your private bankers haven't done it. They haven't doubled your money. I know. Your other investments in your home country, they haven't doubled, but your like investment migration investment, it doubled. But of course, it's in a matter of 4 or 5 years. So basically, I consider that a fiscal success because basically we're focusing on making you money first in the most bland and boring way possible. And then the residency and citizenship is the cherry on top of the cake. So other success stories, I have an investor from Afghanistan. I don't need to like explain, I think, at this point.
Yes.
He already has a second passport and he just sent me, while the unfortunate situation was unfolding in Afghanistan, he sent me a photo from Bodrum in southern Turkey. So, and he said, thank you. You don't need more words than this.
Absolutely.
So I would say this gentleman is the biggest success story I had. The guy saved his life, honestly. And they had a large family. He has 2 daughters that would otherwise be stuck perhaps in Afghanistan. So, of course, it's an extreme example, of course, but there are so much more stories. So basically, one of our Chinese investors who became Turkish and then became and got the Portuguese Golden Visa, the guy has so successful businesses is in Turkey and Portugal as well. Right now, he's not dependent on what's going on in China. And most of the high net worth people in China, they're dependent on China. But not this gentleman. I would say he's insured against what will happen in the next decade. The only thing he needs to worry about is if he would be discriminated by his birthplace. But it's something you can worry about at a later stage.
I agree. But since we've had a lot of Russian friends and clients come in, and right now, as everyone knows, there are a lot of sanctions. Most programs do not allow Russian investors. So, for our Russian listeners, what is your recommendation, especially since the Turkish program is a little volatile right now because of the political situation in the country?
Basically, if they want passive investments, they have 2 options.
Okay.
I would recommend them to redeploy somewhere else, basically, so that they have a lot more options. If they're moving, they have a lot more options. But let's talk about the usual, your run-of-the-mill residency or citizenship by investment programs. Funnily enough, they are very welcome in the USA. They can just apply to the EB5 program. While Europe is refusing the Russians, USA is wide open. Well, EB5 program, it's never wide open for anyone because of the really deep examination they do of your background. But they can apply. Let's leave it at that. And they can go to Italy because apparently our Italian friends don't care what everyone else thinks. Are we surprised? Of course not. But they're just doing their own thing. So they can just, if they want a golden visa, it's Italy. But EB5, again, it's attractive for them. So Caribbean programs, Granada opens and closes, but I never took any investor over there because just like you said, I'm not taking clients to the Turkish program right now.
Yes.
I hate volatility. I need to be able to tell these people who come to our doorstep, it will work like this and full stop. Not ifs, not buts, 80%, 90%, I don't care. It has to be 100%. So basically, did I mention we have a 0 refusal rate across all programs?
That's great to know.
I'm just trying to weave in some marketing just to avoid I sound like a robot. So basically, for Russians, these routes, I would just take it, by the way, like yesterday, because I'm receiving reports that the banking aspect can be a bit more trickier for them in the coming months. Right now, people would be surprised. You can use, I'm not going to name the banks because of our Golden Visa program, who's an ex-banker, told me not to name any banks. But you can use some banks in Russia to transfer money to everywhere, by the way, in USD if you want. But that might change in the coming months. So I would just get a move on.
Okay. Since we're currently in Istanbul right now, and the hot topic is the upcoming elections. So, the upcoming elections have been described as critical for the country's future and have been a topic of concern, not just for locals, but also for investors. How do you think this will affect potential and current clients' investments in Turkey?
Well, that's tricky. All right. Either way, I think Turkey will be fine. We will be fine either way. And both results, unfortunately, will bring some headaches to the general public and international investors. Number one would be if there is a ban on foreign purchases, there will be a drop in real estate prices. So some of our investments, current investments, they can go down in value. But imagine this. In the past 30 years, Turkish real estate has never made you lose money. You have to like zoom out of the graph, as some of my economist friends says. But overnight, I think we will have a 10% drop in real estate prices if the opposition comes in and they just put the ban, as they promised, on the purchase of real estate by foreigners. The program is going to go anyways, with an opposition victory. But I am going to go out on a limb and say the opposition will have some ways of enabling personal FDI, foreign direct investment. So I call our industry retail FDI. So institutionals, they deploy cash. That's most of the foreign direct investment. But we take care of a part of the FDI that is not dependent on agendas of X and Y institutions. So basically, they will have some way of having it open. By the way, there are no guarantees if the current government stays in power. There are no guarantees about the future of the program. Because don't forget, they can just be the guys who close the program and put us bad immigrants in our places. So there are no guarantees in the next decade. For Turkey, for Greece, I think they will be safe for a while because I think they're playing their cards right with the European Union. Italians, I don't know. Their economy is in a tough spot. They might end up in a position where they need to compromise on their strong positions. But the Turkish case economically will be fine. People will need, I'm just going to put on my Turkish hat right now, people will keep needing us. In the multipolar world, guys who just I don't know, we didn't choose our place in the world geographically, I would say, but the guys just on the middle of the map, let's say, of course you need them to be on your side. And of course there will be a lot of business going through this location. There are a lot of companies being relocated here, so we'll be fine. The government X or Y, it's not going to change anything drastically. We will have some headaches after the election for perhaps 3-4 months, and then it will be business as usual. Imagine, there was an armed coup attempt in Turkey, and 1 month later, real estate transactions, they just return where they were. This shouldn't happen, by the way. It makes us sound like sociopaths as a country. We shouldn't be that resilient, but this is what happened. So we bounce back really fast.
As an expat who's been in Turkey for a very long time, I can vouch for the resilience that the Turkish people have and the country has. So I think Turkey's going to be just fine. Thank you very much for this insightful conversation today, Ahmed. It was a pleasure. For all those who are listening to us, we have a webinar coming up on the 19th of April this year. the topic of which would be the global banking crisis. What does it mean for the golden visas and second citizenship? And our today's guest, Ahmed Chanar, is going to be discussing more about how to protect your investments in the current banking crisis. So please join us. You could register on our website www.smartcitizenship.com. Thank you for joining us this week on the Smart Citizenship podcast. Make sure to visit our website at smartcitizenship.com. You can subscribe to this show on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube Music. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Until next time, think smart, act smarter.